Today is May 12th, 2009, and joining us today is Earl Seipp. And Mr. Seipp has agreed to share some of his memories of growing up in Carroll County. And I just want to start with some of your background, sir. Where and when were you born?
I was born July the 4th, 1929, on Pennsylvania Avenue. In those days, you weren't born in the hospital unless there were complications.
And do you have any brothers or sisters?
There were 6 kids in my family. The oldest one was my sister, and I had an older brother, and then I was third. And then I had 3 more brothers born after. So right now, my sister and older brother are deceased. The rest of us are still living.
And are they still living in this area?
Yeah, pretty much, yes.
And I think you said your father was the chief of police around here?
My father was the chief of police on the police force in Westminster. I think he started around 1930, I think. I think it's probably during the Depression, and he retired in 1967. So it's a long time.
That is a very long time.
And I remember when I first started walking around, I think there were like 3 officers, my father and 2 other, and I think they had pretty much motorcycles with sidecars. Then later they got a cruiser.
And that was the entire police force?
At that time, yes. And then it started increasing about the end of World War II. I think the force increased to around 6. And a lot of those guys were getting out of service. A lot of them had military police backgrounds and so forth. And so there on, the force started growing, and I don't know how many they got now. They must have 40-some or close to 50. And back in those days, you saw them on the street, walking.
So they knew all the people that lived in the area?
Beg your pardon?
So they were the beat cops who knew the people in the area?
Yeah, they were pretty well known, and somebody getting in a fight or got drunk or something in a tavern down there, most of the time they would take them home rather than take them to jail or charge them. And my father also was, I know now, pretty much like a social worker, because invariably we were having dinner in the evenings, the phone would ring, and some guy was mad at his wife, and she called, so he would have to go out and interview him, and most of the time he settled it down. And little things like that, but there wasn't that much crime back then.
What was it like growing up with the police chief as your father? Could you get away with things, or?
Well, he was pretty strict. He was 6'6" and weighed about 260, and he was firm, and I think he had a great reputation here in the county. And we knew he was tough. You know, we disobeyed now and then, but not too much. And he let us have our reign, so to speak. I mean, we had gangs in the neighborhood that we played together, and things like that. And also, back in those days, the other parents would call your home if they saw you misbehaving, and then when Dad came home for dinner that evening, then you know you had to take the consequences.
You mentioned something about your first job. What was your first job?
Well, I think I was around 8 or 9. My older brother had a paper route where in those days they either walked or rode bikes and threw the papers on the porches, not on the lawns like they do now. And he gave me a couple streets of his route, and he paid me $0.25 a week. So I tell youngsters now, I said, I spend 10 cents of that quarter going to the State Theater every Saturday afternoon to see the Western shows. Next door was a Woolworth, 5 and dime. They sold these big candy bars for a nickel. So that was 15 cents going. The other 10 cents I banked at the school. Back in those days, every Tuesday, the teacher had to collect your change and fill out your passbook, and we had a little savings account, so that's how I spent a quarter.
Wow. Started investing early.
Well, to me it was learning discipline and organization at a young age, and it's helped me throughout life during my time in the service and my time in the Boy Scouts. I was a great believer in getting in the Boy Scouts. And in fact, when Pearl Harbor was bombed December the 7th, 1941, I had just been in the Scouts just a couple months. So I was maybe 12 years old. And during that time, there was only one troop in Westminster. It was number 321, sponsored by the Rotary Club. Churches were not involved in scouting back at that time, so we had a large troop. And it was well organized and well run. And to help the war effort, they had us doing things like collecting scrap and things like that, and newspapers they were collecting, and we just did a lot of activity within the community. We were called upon, and we also learned what they call close order drill, which when I entered the Army, I knew what that was. That was like marching in groups. So it was great, and I became a Star Scout, and then Grace Lutheran Church decided to start a troop, so I transferred, because that was my church, to kind of help them get started. So I was like a senior patrol leader and working with the green young kids coming in, which was good experience. So then you want me to ad lib and go on? I can kind of take it from there.
Actually, you mentioned something earlier that I thought was interesting. When Pearl Harbor was actually bombed, what was your reaction, and what were the kind of things that you did to react?
Well, it was a Sunday afternoon, and we were out front on the sidewalk playing something, and I remember my mother came to the door. She had heard her on the radio, and that was the only communication then, no TVs. And, at that young age, it doesn't really hit you that hard. But then as the war progressed, as kids that age, we got into playing war games, and I remember making a machine gun out of a part 2x4 and a rain spout. And we'd go out here and make out we were playing war. So then when I got out of high school, 1947, World War II had ended in 45, so they were still drafting then. So two of my buddies, myself, we were in a tavern here in Westminster one afternoon, and we said, well, sooner or later they're going to draft us. Let's enlist because we could go to Germany. And that's what we did. And probably the luckiest thing I ever did, because while we were there in the occupation army of Germany, the Korean War started. And if I'd have waited to have been drafted, probably might not be here now. I probably would have ended up in Korea in combat. So, and then Harry Truman was in office then, and we enlisted for 3 years, but everybody got frozen in an extra year. So I spent most of my time in Germany, and took some furloughs over there to I was in England. I had lunch on the Eiffel Tower. I had a furlough to Switzerland.
Wow.
Took one to England to see the Grand National Steeplechase outside of Liverpool. And most of the travel there was by train, which was a lot of fun. And I had good duty over there, and went to military police school and criminal investigator school in Oberammergau, and did investigative work and worked with the German police. And it was good duty. And my extended year, I got shipped back, which I hated to do because I wanted to see some more of Europe. But I was stationed in the 3rd Infantry Regiment in the ceremonial outfit outside of Washington, and over near the Arlington Cemetery. And I was not in the ceremonial group that had the burials and the tomb guard, but we were in a supporting company. So I really liked the service. I probably would have stayed in, but then the GI Bill was activated again, which they had activated for the World War II veterans, so that was available. So I had to make a decision, either stay in and make a career or get out and go to college. So I decided to get out, and I went to Western Maryland and started at the mid-semester in February of 1952, went right straight through summers. I went through in 3 years and graduated in 56. The major in sociology and a minor in psychology and business administration.
Wow, and you did all that in 3 years.
Yeah, by going to summer school. I mean, I paid a price, but I was old. I was 22 when I started, and I dated my wife for 4 years, and I wanted to get to college over with and get a job, settle down, get married, and start increasing the population.
So did you end up having any children?
I had 2 daughters, and one's a licensed mental health counselor in Florida, and the other one is in Loudoun County, Virginia. They both, Rob in Florida went to Western Maryland, and Heidi, who's in Virginia, went to Towson State. Okay. So her career now is, she majored in English, but her career now is mostly horses. She teaches lessons and judges and travels around, and she's happy. I think she wrote for the Carroll County Times for a while when she first got out of college. So let's see, what else?
What was your first job when you graduated from college? What did you end up doing?
Well, I really wanted, my main interest in was personnel, because I had experience of interviewing when I did investigative work and with my background. But at that time in 1956, when I graduated, the job situation was a little tough. So I had to, my first job was with Gunther Brewing Company. It was in like a sales promotion job, and then I left there and went to Montgomery Ward. I was in an executive training program, and finally I answered a blind ad one time. I wasn't real happy with Ward's, and they eventually went out of business, so another lucky thing. So I ended up getting in the life insurance business, and this was a blind ad. I didn't know what I was getting into, and well, I'm not sure I could sell that. But after I got training, I started that in '59 and retired in, God, I'm going to say about 93 or 92, along in there. So that was my career, and I was able to support my family and did a lot of good. Mm-hmm. It's great satisfaction paying a death claim, I found out.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm in 1970, I got involved with politics, so I ran for county commissioner in 1974, and I made through the primary, but I lost in the general. So I think that year it was the electees were J. Norman Graham and Roger Mann and John Joy from Tawnytown area. So, but I ran pretty well and didn't spend a lot of money. I didn't give out pens or put up yard signs and stuff like that. But I was fairly well known then, and I had good literature out that gave my background, so I had pretty good support. Probably should have ran the next time people were asking me to do that, but it's kind of a disappointment when you get defeated. But it wears off after a while, and I'm still active in politics, and I think it's important. Very disappointed that people don't vote much now, and I was just reading in the Morning Times about the Westminster election. I think it was yesterday. Very low turnout, and I don't know what the answer is, but I think people I would think they get more involved. So,
Have you voted in every election?
I voted every election.
When was the first time that you voted?
The first man I voted for was Ike Eisenhower.
Wow, when was that?
I should know that date, but I'm going to say I was out of the service, and I might have been in college. I don't know. I don't remember the date.
Right, but you were 21.
Oh yeah, I was over 21. I was 22 when I started college, so I was in my mid-20s.
Okay.
So,
what made you vote for Eisenhower?
well, he was a great leader during World War II, and I registered in the Republican Party because at that time that was my choice, and I liked him not only as a soldier and a man, but he was a great president. Can't say that for some others, but came after him.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, then I got married in 48 and had 2 daughters. So I was, 30s when I got married, and my wife was too, and our 2 daughters 22 months apart. They were born, I think, October 59 and July 61.
How did you meet your wife?
Met her at a fraternity party at Western Maryland.
Okay.
She had been there with another date, and she was from Baltimore, and she had attended Washington College. I think she got out of college in like 49, and she was working at WBAL television station, so
interesting.
we didn't want to get married while I was still in college. I didn't have any money. Had to work a couple of years to get enough money to buy the hardware that goes on your hand. So, and to get started. But no, I was attracted to her. I met her at that party, and she was a great marriage. It was a great marriage.
That's wonderful.
And we had our struggles, financially, like everybody did, and when you're starting out. But we got through it, and in fact, I lost her in 1997 from metastatic breast cancer, which was diagnosed in 72, and she lived in 92. Started having some reoccurrence, and it metastasized into the bones. But even after that, she lived another 5 years. So, she was about 20 years there. We thought she was free and clear, but you just never know about that disease.
Right. She sounds like a strong woman. Did she work outside of the home as well, or did she?
No, she got pregnant, and then she terminated her job in '59 when our first daughter was born, and we had an apartment in Baltimore at that time, and then actually when I got in the insurance business, I came back to Westminster and built a house. So then she never worked after that. Today, two people were working today, but we were pretty frugal, managed our money well, and she was a home mom, and she even got upset when the kids had to go to school. She used to say, we used to laugh, but she enjoyed, raising the kids and being a mother and a housekeeper, and I was lucky.
Was Westminster a good place to raise a family?
I had a lot of luck, really, in my life. I remember one time when I was stationed in Germany, I went out for the regimental football team, and we were training back at the post. And during those years, there was a lot of training and maneuvers because of the Russian threat. We were always told, in our training, that if the Russians ever invaded through the Fulda Gap, we were a holding company, or a holding army. So while I'm training for football, the outfit went on maneuvers, and at that time I was in a rifle platoon, and you had assigned seats on a truck that carried a squad. Well, the driver went around the curve too fast, skidded on gravel, the truck overturned and landed on the head of the guy that was sitting in the seat I would have been in.
Oh my gosh.
So I often think about that. Would I have been thrown clear, or would I have been a casualty? And he was really a hell of a nice guy, and it upset me for a long time. That's just regressing there, going back, and you want me to keep on schedule here.
Actually, I did want to ask you something. When we talked earlier, you mentioned something about you were there during the Berlin airlift. Can you tell us something about that?
I was over there, during that time, and what they call now the Cold War. And because it was, at that time, Russia was a threat, because they expanded. For people to know a little bit about history, they had a lot of other countries under their control, and I don't think they were as nice to get along with as the U.S. In fact, I had a very good friend that I worked with over there, had been on the Russian front in the German army, was a lieutenant. And he said when the war was winding down, they walked out through Romania so they get captured by the Americans rather than the Russians, who he was a great friend I worked with over there when I was an investigator, who
Did you actually work cases when you were an investigator? Did you have anything?
We had some, not, I never was involved in any real serious like murders or things like that, but we were primary. If something happened in town, we were support for the German police. So if they were involved in an incident involving a soldier, we were there to represent, so the soldier wouldn't mouth off or threaten the German policeman. And my German friend, he worked for the health department and was in charge of what they call VD control, because venereal disease was a big issue, not drugs. I never heard anything about drugs when I was there. But venereal disease was a big thing, and he had subpoena power to order women, so to speak, prostitutes or streetwalkers, whatever they call them, to go get checked at hospitals. And So I would go out with him also to keep GIs from interfering with his duties. He eventually emigrated to the United States and had a son that came with him. I knew him over there, and he eventually went to school and colleges here and went in the Navy and became a physician. And I don't know whether I'm divulging confidential information, but he was in Bethesda. He was a personal physician for Jimmy Carter's wife. I think she had some allergy problems, and this is his specialty. And I keep in little contact with him. He's in Holland, Michigan now. He's got out of service. But I was for his dad, I was investigated by the Secret Service because he had my name on there as a reference. And he did very well when he came over. He got a nice job with Kodak because he knew the Germans were ahead of us in microfilming, that kind of stuff. And he ended up with a nice job with Kodak and retired from them. And had a lot of history over the dam.
If I could ask you a follow-up question, if you don't mind talking about it, but you mentioned something earlier about a soldier who had VD and how he was treated. I don't know if that was something it seemed like it was a big stigma back then.
Yeah, just to show you the difference in the Army back then and now, this poor guy, as I remember, he was an Italian guy from New York, and he contracted syphilis. And of course, we had a tough company commander and a first sergeant. Well, to punish him, and I'm talking about January and February, in Augsburg, Germany, it was cold. They made him sleep on the barracks lawn in his pup tent, and we ate our meals in battalion-sized mess halls, and we would always march to chow, as they said, in formation. And they made him bring up the end, and he had to eat off of his mess kit, which you eat off of when you're out in the field, and we ate off of stainless steel trays. And I really felt sorry for the guy. I thought, you know, he made a mistake, but that was, I don't think at that time, it was good punishment. But I couldn't go in and say anything, and I'd have been probably out there sleeping with him. But they were tough back then. I think the Army probably is not that bad now. I think all you'd have to do now, if you got that kind of punishment, would be call your congressman or some politician, and they would investigate. So, yeah, that was a little incident we discussed ahead of time. But I don't know how much time did I have.
4 minutes. Are there any other changes that you've seen over the years that, you know, surprise you or interest you?
Well, I've seen a lot of changes around Westminster, you know, growing up here with a lot of places that I frequent or were here are now gone, like the City Restaurant was kind of a hangout. There was another club called the Co-Ed Club, which was up just above John Street now, along in there. It's gone. Which is a place, they had a jukebox in there and booze, and you could go in there and it was mainly like a soda and Sunday place. But they'd let you dance. You know, you could put a nickel in the jukebox and dance. And that was kind of a hangout for the youngsters. And
was that for like the high school students or the college
yeah,
age?
Yeah. And then there's a place up at the corner of Union Street up near the college called Margaret and Earl's. The college students hung out there, and of course, us guys that were seniors in high school, we were so-called upgrading. We would hang out there too, and then you could dance in there, and that was a nice hangout too. And of course, there was always the pit, which is now where Stables is. That was a hangout, a beer drinking place, shuffleboard, and Colts used to hang out there when they were training here in Western Maryland. And but back at that time, those times, you know, I think we were better behaved. As I told you earlier, my dad was on duty at night, and if there's a bunch of guys hanging around the city restaurant on the street at 12 o'clock, he'd pull over and say, "Okay, boys, it's time to go home." And they would go. No sassing, mm-hmm. and no unruliness. So, but that wouldn't happen today. They'd say anything to a policeman, get away with it. But I've seen a lot of changes. You know, Saturday night was a big time in town. The street was so crowded you had to zigzag to walk up and down the pavements because all the rural people came to town to shop and hobnob on the street. And socially, it was just a better time, you know. I haven't read Brokaw's book about the Great Generation, but I was in it.
Thank you so much for sharing all with us. That was wonderful.